blonde roux is going to be the one that we most commonly use in the kitchen. Okay? I'm going to cook it down. And you see when I'm using the spatula, I can get everything off the sides of the pan. I can make sure that everything's incorporated properly. And we're just going to let it start to cook a little bit more. So notice how I'm turning the pan, I'm stirring and shaking at the same time. Okay? That's what I want you guys to do. Now, a lot of people would call that a white roux. Okay, for me, a white roux is just incorporate the fat and the flour until it's completely mixed. Okay, for a blonde roux, for me, my definition of it is when it's starting to develop a little bit of color. Okay, not much. Okay, we really want to make sure that we're not overcooking our blonde roux. Now, pass it around and smell it, you'll start to get that cooked smell, okay? It's going to be kind of a pleasant, toasty, like toasted or roasted nuts, toasted bread. You know, it's got a very pleasant flavor to it, right? Or aroma, okay? Now the brown roux, it's going to take quite some time to cook, okay? And we're going to cook that down. We're really going to start to get like a toasted or a peanut butter kind of smell. Or who's ever made microwave popcorn? Who's ever left their popcorn in the microwave just a little too long? All of you, right? Okay. So you know that funky kind of burnt smell, like burnt popcorn? That's what your brown roux is going to taste, smell like. Okay? So. But then you might say, Chef, why would we want to use that to flavor anything? Because once it's mixed in with whatever you're thickening with it, okay, you're really going to get a much deeper kind of a flavor. It's going to be a much more intense kind of a flavor to it, okay? Typically, like I said, we use a brown roux for dark gravies and roasted meats. If you were making gumbo or etouffee or jambalaya, you want to use a brown roux, okay? Because that's where all that flavor comes in, okay? A lot of people make the mistake with Cajun cooking, thinking that it's all spice, and it's not true. It should be all flavor. Cajun cooking is long, low, and slow. You gotta cook it very slow. Who's ever made menudo? Or been in the house when we cook menudo? How long does it take? Forever. Right? How does it taste when it's done? If you like it, you really like it. If you don't like it, you're like, not so much, right? But when it's good, it's really good. Same kind of thing with gumbo and jambalaya, those kinds of things. The longer they cook, chitlins. Who's ever had chitlins? Oh, you got to be a special kind of hungry to like chitlins, right? But when they're good, they're really good. When they're not, they're really not good at all, okay? So, look at the colors. How much of a difference between the white roux and the blonde roux is there really? It doesn't really look like too much of a difference, but but you could smell the difference, right? That's a complete and total different kind of flavor. And that's what I mean about using more than just sight. Okay? You've got to look at it, you've got to smell it, you've got to feel it. What I mean by feeling it is moving it around in a pan like that. Okay? As you're cooking it more, it's going to get a little bit looser. A lot of people would say, well, chef, it doesn't look like wet sand right now, does it? You know, it doesn't have that, you know, it's not going to stick or hold together, right? And that's fine, okay? When we start, we want that consistency, okay? But as we cook it, remember, the longer we cook it, both batches, the longer we cook it, the less what? Thickening properties it's going to have, because we're breaking down that starch, okay? We're cooking out that starch, but we're also developing a lot of flavor. I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit here. When you're making a brown roux, okay, I want you guys to do it slowly, okay? I learned a trick years and years ago from a guy from Louisiana. This dude was a true hardcore Cajun. He said, you got to bake your flour first to make a brown roux, right? I said, bake the flour? He's like, just put it on a sheet pan, put it in the oven, and bake it. And get it nice and toasty. Then that's going to cut your time down, and you're going to have a much nicer flavor, right? He was right, you know? So there's a lot of tricks and a lot of tips that you'll pick up as you become more experienced, as you do a lot more, okay? Obviously, we have a lot of different approaches to making a lot of different foods, right? But for the most part, you know, you learn as you go, okay? What we're teaching you here are the fundamentals, the basics. You take what you learn here, and then you go out to the industry, you start working, you apply these principles to what you learn out there, and then that's where you become your own cook. You're not just following a recipe. You get to create your recipes, right? Okay, so now we're cooking that brown roux down. Want it to be the color of peanut butter, okay? Now, if I were to take this off the stove right now and just leave it on the counter, is it gonna still cook? Yeah, what's that called? Carryover cooking, right? That residual heat that's gonna be in our product, right? Right now, you definitely don't want this stuff to splash up and get on your hand, okay? Because it's gonna stick and it's gonna burn, okay? It's happened to me more than once, so, okay. Now, see that nice peanut butter kind of color? Okay? This is what we call our brown roux. Okay, so I'm gonna take some, put on a plate. Can you smell it from there? Yeah. So when you smell it, think about that popcorn that's been in the microwave a little too long, right?